I regret my vote. I never thought I'd say that, but I regret my vote.
It's all gone. Everything is gone.
It's about $250,000 to $300,000 worth of revenue.
Just left to rot.
Yeah, which is one thing, but it's also lost revenue for the workers that would have been able to pick them had they been here.
Oregon farmer Ian Chandler says about half his usual crew didn't show up this season, leaving him scrambling to backfill dozens of positions.
You're calling them, I assume, individually
Yes.
and saying,
Yes.
what's going on?
Yes. And so
what are they telling you?
Well, in the beginning of the season, it coincided, unfortunately, with a lot of really strong immigration enforcement down in Southern California, where our workforce comes from. And that kind of had a chilling effect on people wanting to move.
While Ian says his workers are hired with what seemed to be a valid ID and work papers, fear of ICE raids kept many of them from traveling north this year.
There are a lot of people who are very concerned out there who voted for this administration. But, you know, they wrote it all down in Project 2025. I guess we should have paid a little closer attention to what was in that. I read the agriculture section. I know it better than I probably should. But it was there. It was all in writing. We probably should have paid closer attention to it. I'll just say this. I think it's time for this administration to recognize who put them into office and also to understand that these people are hurting. And this only adds to the hurt that they're already dealing with.
It looks like some Maga farmers are finally facing the consequences of their own choices. After voting for Trump, they watched migrant workers who had been keeping their farms running get deported. They thought black folks would step in to repress them, but that didn't happen. Now their fields are empty and their plans have backfired. Let's dive into this story and see what people are saying. I will come back at the end and give you a full breakdown of what's going on. Stay tuned.
So my good sis J-Doll says she wants to see the clip. She said, let me see the clip. Ask and you shall receive.
Back to their country with a pass back in legally, and we're doing things that are very difficult to do and very complex, but it works really well. We're sending them back, and then they're schooling, they're learning, they're coming in legally. We have a lot of that going on, but we're taking care of our farmers. We can't let our farmers not have anybody, these are these people, you can't replace them very easily. You know, people that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die. I said, that's interesting, isn't it? You know, these are very, in many ways, they're very, very special people. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so now that you have actually heard the clip, that you've heard the recording for yourself, let's actually break down exactly what Donald Trump has said so far. He started off that clip or that recording stating, how, they have policies and plan of trying to help the farmers, right? Because they desperately need these migrant workers. They need these undocumented migrant workers. They can't leave them without anybody. That right there is admission that the United States agriculture economy is taking a hit behind his policies and his mass deportations. That's the first thing. Donald Trump stresses the fact that the American farmers cannot be left without anybody. They cannot be left without anybody. And then he further goes on by saying that the undocumented migrant workers that he once was calling illegal criminals are very, very special people. They're very, very special people that cannot be easily replaced. Right after Donald Trump makes that statement and say that they cannot be replaced easily, he goes right into stating that inner city people are not doing that work. Words have meanings, okay? When it comes to this government and this American society, when they say inner people, they're referring to black people. And when he said that kind of work, he's talking about field work. In addition to him stating that inner city people will not be doing that kind of work, he goes on by saying that I've tried, we've tried, everybody's tried. Do you know who everybody is? The American government, white supremacy. And do you want to know what their version of trying was? DEI eliminations. DEI eliminations. And not just that, but the undoing of so many policies and acts that actually allowed for Black people to have equal footing amongst white people in certain areas, in certain spaces. The elimination of DEI programs and incentives were intended to push Black people out of the spaces that white people deemed should only be for them. And I'm talking about admin jobs. I'm talking about jobs in medicine, in accounting. They wanted Black people to go back to back-breaking work, okay? Being in the fields, hospitality work. That's what they wanted. As of right now, 300,000 women have been displaced from employment, okay? They have lost their jobs. And they thought, and when I say they, this white supremacy American government thought that those 300,000 Black women were going to go back into the field. Instead, they got creative. And so with all of these mass deportations, they thought that they were going to be able to fill the roles with their original laborers, okay? Their labor workers, Black people. Now, see, if there's only two things that you take from this video, the first thing that I want you to take away is the fact that America's success is directly dependent on its labor, free labor, an amount of free labor that they're able to exploit from the citizens, okay? And the second thing is that Black Americans will always be their first target. That will always be their first target. When they think about getting free labor, exploited free labor, they will always think of Black Americans. Do you understand the level of hatred, jealousy, animosity that you have to have, that this American Constitution has to have to literally pick at one group of people forever, to the point where they are willing to wipe out all other races to try to get this one race of people to bow down, and they refuse. They refuse. You guys, America, had labor that you were already exploiting, but you were willing to get rid of them in mass deportations, all because you wanted to push Black people out of those offices. You wanted to push them out of those doctor coats and those labs. You wanted to push them out of those research trials. You wanted them to be in the field. So you got rid of the migrant workers that were here that you were already exploiting, because if that's one thing that America knows how to do, is exploit some fucking labor. You already had it, but you got rid of them, hoping that you can force Black people back into those positions. And now because Black people said, before you come and get me, let it all burn. Now that Black people have actually said that and stood on that, you guys are realizing how you really are. White supremacy, white American supremacy is realizing how they really are. Because how many Black people do you know was opening up their mouth to say that, yeah, these immigrants, these migrant workers are taking our jobs? Not one Black person. Not one Black person said that. And by the way, that's what they meant when they were saying Black jobs. Hospitality, cleaning people's homes, taking care of people's kids, picking berries. That's what they wanted as Black jobs. They don't want us to be engineers. They don't want us to be doctors. They don't want us to be comedians. They don't want us to be anything. They don't want us to do nothing but work for them. And now because of America's racism and all you MAGA supporters that went and voted in hopes of making America great again, which really means white people in the office, Black people in the fields. All right? You guys are actually really realizing how much you f***ed yourselves over. They say that with each great empire comes a great fall. And it looks like America's on its way.
Someone asked me the other day, why is it that more of America's farmers have not yet turned on Trump? After all, he's cut farm-to-table programs, he's cut farm-to-school lunch programs, he's cut all kinds of funding for, structural improvements, drainage, climate resilience programs. He's cut all kinds of grant funding for farmers all across this country. He's cut USAID that has cost America's farmers billions. Ask farmers in Nebraska how they're doing right now. We are seeing silos full of corn and wheat and sorghum that go unsold. The government, United States government, had promised to buy these crops, and then they pulled the contracts because Elon Musk gutted USAID. And all of this food, not just grains, but also milk that is turned into powdered milk, that was meant to go and secure our interests abroad and feed hungry people, is now sitting unsold in the United States of America, and that is hurting our farmers. Why are more of them not pissed off? And somebody else said, well, why are more farmers not freaking out that all of their migrant labor is being snatched by ICE? We are seeing ICE running into farm fields, snatching migrants who are toiling, picking our food, the food to feed the American people. They are coming in and tackling and snatching these folks, abducting them, and stuffing them into detention facilities where billions of our taxpayer money is going to keep these people imprisoned. And someone in my comments who was from the Midwest said, oh, don't you understand, in a lot of these states, especially a lot of the grain farmers and dairy farmers, they don't actually use that much immigrant labor. If they have very mechanized, agricultural setups on their farms, then they're not really interfacing that much with migrant labor. And yes, I totally understand, for those folks who are growing large amounts of soybeans and grains, that makes sense. If you don't have to interact with brown people on a regular basis, you can dehumanize them more easily. You can justify what Trump is doing more easily. But there are farmers all around the country that rely heavily, heavily on migrant labor, especially where I am on the West Coast, and they are about to feel the hurt real bad. It's starting to be that time of year where more and more crops need to be picked. And while it was an issue earlier in the year, like in Florida and Southern California, we saw a little bit of farm laborers who didn't want to show up to pick strawberries and broccoli and citrus because they were worried about ICE. Well, now we are seeing the Republicans in Congress. Republicans are now the fascist party of this country, right? They are fully consolidated as a fascist party. They have now agreed to take billions of our tax dollars and expand ICE tenfold. The Republicans in Congress have now given Donald Trump $150 billion of our hard-earned tax money to create his own massive secret police force, his own Gestapo that will be terrorizing communities all over the country. There's $150 billion for raids, but $0 for Medicaid. Do not forget that Republicans did that. Republicans did that to all of us. And so now we are seeing a tenfold increase in the completely rational fear of our hardworking migrant farm workers who feed this nation. And guess what? Farmers all around the country, right at a time when cherries and soon plums and peaches and all kinds of other crops around the country are coming ripe, crops that by and large need to be picked and sorted by hand. There's a massive farm labor shortage because workers are terrified that they are going to be snatched off the job, that while they are working, someone will snatch them out of the field and they will never see their families again. I'd like to point you to a piece from Spokane Public Radio from last week. It's called "Fear of ICE Causes Labor Shortage for Washington Cherry Growers." We've had 200 years of migrant farm workers in this country traveling from Mexico up the West Coast, following the picking season to harvest our food. Now, we've also had 200 years of abusing those farm workers, exploiting them, refusing to pay them a living wage or giving them safe work conditions. Yes, one of the things I've said previously is that I hope at the end of all of this, one of the things that comes out of this is that we understand the people who pick our food, they deserve dignity, they deserve a living wage, they deserve safe working conditions. They also deserve justice, and the people who are doing this to them deserve accountability. What we're seeing is a lot of the stone fruit pickers up here in Oregon and Washington, they come up from California and they are afraid to make that drive. They're afraid that there will be checkpoints where they will get abducted. They're afraid once they get here that they will be abducted by ICE. And so they're hiding. I can only imagine what kind of food insecurity that creates for their families. So the Spokane Public Radio piece talks about how the cherry picking labor shortage in Washington state is reaching a crisis point. They interview a woman named Rosa Hernandez, who is picking cherries at an orchard in Wenatchee. She was one of the few who was willing to make the drive from California to Washington to pick this year. She did so because she's an American citizen. But she said even though she is a U.S. citizen, she was terrified to make the drive because she's a brown person. We are seeing ICE doesn't give a shit about your citizenship. If you look like you could potentially be an immigrant or have immigrant ancestry, if you happen to have any kind of an accent, if you speak Spanish, they don't care, they will snatch you. And there's no oversight for you. There's no protection for you right now. She talks about how she did the long drive up to Washington State and she was afraid to pull over at rest stops to go pee because they have heard that ICE agents are waiting at rest stops. They're waiting at gas stations to snatch people. One of the farmers that they interviewed said that he's really terrified they can't get people to pick their cherries and that impacts the financing of their farm. So when you couple the fact that fruit is rotting on the tree with the cuts in grant programs and the volatile economic circumstances in the United States, he's worried that what we're going to see is by next year, more and more farms will be going under. Even Fox News for Seattle, even Fox News is covering this story, saying the growers are not just worried about cherries, they are worried that these labor shortages will extend to apples, grapes, and many other fruits that are grown in Washington State, also grown here in Oregon. Fox News called immigrant farm workers essential to our agricultural system. They said growers across central Washington say fears of immigration enforcement and potential ICE raids are keeping workers away from the field and are currently threatening to leave millions and millions of dollars worth of cherries unpicked, rotting on the trees. The Fox News story went on to interview migrants who said they are scared to show up and that the fear will compound. It will get worse and worse as ICE escalates. And then interestingly enough, there's a whole section in this article for Fox News readers that is called Why You Should Care. Not surprisingly, maybe. It doesn't say you should care because what is being done to our immigrant farm workers is inhumane, it's cruel, it's illegal, it's terrible, it's an ethnic cleansing in the United States. No. Why you should care, Fox News reader, is because Washington State is the nation's top producer of sweet cherries. And if the fruit is not being picked, that means that there is going to be a shortage and prices are going to go up. Even a delay, even if there's just a delay in picking, fruit is rotting on the tree. Fruit is an ephemeral crop, y'all. Fruit can't just sit there hanging out. You have to pick it when it's ripe. And so any delay, any shortage of labor for any period of time is immediately lost revenue. Now, this piece came out right before the big bloated budget bill got passed by Republicans in Congress. And, the Fox News take is hopefully lawmakers will consider the long-term economic impact of the agricultural labor force and even revisit immigration reform. I don't know how to make Republicans care about immigrants. I don't know how to make them have compassion and a conscience. I don't know how to make them be moved by the suffering that is being inflicted by our government right now. I don't know how to make them care about anything but their own pocket, their own personal suffering, their own negative experiences. And you could say at some point there's going to be such a severe shortage of labor on our farms that people are going to go hungry. It's going to impact the economy. And then folks will start to care. They will want things like immigration reform. I hope so, but also I am quite worried that this massive expansion of ICE abductions to 3,000 people a day, 3,000 non-criminals a day that are being stuffed into these concentration camps, that those will become forced labor camps. We've already seen Trump say that multiple times, that people in detention camps could be lent back to the farmers. But as of right now, it looks like there is going to be a shortage of all kinds of crops that are coming ripe over the next several weeks. It looks like there's going to be a shortage of what is available in the stores. There will be increased prices. Until we stop it, there will be increasing food shortages. Until we stop it, there will be increasing human rights violations. Until we stop it, there will be hundreds of billions of our tax dollars being used to inflict suffering, to fund the American Gestapo, not only terrorizing our country, but weakening our food supply and our entire...
There is a certain kind of irony you can't write in a movie script because people would say it's too unrealistic. Imagine this. You vote for policies that you think are going to make your life easier, but those same policies pull the rug right out from under you. That's what's happening to a lot of these farmers. they voted for Trump, cheered when he promised to get rid of illegals, and clapped when the deportations started. But here is the twist. Those illegals were the very people picking their crops, milking their cows, and keeping their farm work moving. Now, instead of a better America, they've got acres of crops rotting in the sun, livestock unattended, and bills stacking up. They thought black folks, the same community that has been historically underpaid, overworked, and excluded from the fair opportunities in farming, would suddenly jump in to fill the gap. Let's get one thing straight. Black folks in America are not just some backup labor force waiting for a phone call. The idea that after centuries of slavery, sharecropping, Jim Crow, and discriminatory farming policies, Black Americans would suddenly rush in to work on those farms for low wages is wild. Many people don't realize this. The USDA has a long history of denying black farmers loans, assistance, and land rights. Families lost their farms not because they couldn't farm, but because they were deliberately shut out. So why would anyone go help the same industry that's never helped them? It's not about being petty, it's about self-respect. People have other opportunities now. They can work in their tech, start online businesses, drive Uber, make content, whatever. Why would you pick tomatoes for $9 with no benefits when you can make twice that delivering packages in the city? Here is the thing about farm work. It's not that Americans cannot do it. It's that they won't do it for the wages offered. Immigrant workers, especially from Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean, have been backbone of the US agriculture for decades. Farmers like to say, no one wants to work anymore. But that is not just true. People just don't want to work for exploitation wages. If these farmers were willing to pay 25 up to 30 an hour with benefits and safe working conditions, they would have a line of workers at their gates tomorrow morning. But they are not doing that. They want cheap labor, and when that cheap labor gets taken away, they suddenly realize how dependent they were on the very people they were fine with deporting. This is a classic case of political short-term thinking. Some folks vote for a candidate because they agree with one thing they said without thinking about the ripple effects. Trump's deportation policies didn't just send people home. They disrupted entire industries, agriculture, construction, hospitality, all took hits. Farmers are finding out that immigration isn't just a border issue, it's an economic one. And here is the kicker. Many of these same farmers are now lobbying the government for more immigrant worker programs. They want the same very thing they voted against. There is also this cultural disconnect. Some farmers thought black folks would just step in because they see labor as interchangeable. But they forget history. The Great Migration was literally black Americans leaving farm labor in the South for better opportunities in the North. That was 100 years ago, and it is still relevant today. People aren't going to run back into the fields unless they see dignity, fair pay, and the reason to believe this works respect them. This is not just about farms. This is about how America treats labor, especially labor from marginalized groups. When it's immigrants crossing the border or descendants of enslaved Africans, the system often treats them as tools, not people. What we are seeing now is what happens when those tools, the human beings, aren't there anymore. The system starts to crack, and instead of asking, how do we value workers more, some folks are still asking, how do we get them back for cheap? That's the wrong question. The reason here is simple. You can't exploit people forever and expect them to be there when you snap your fingers. Whether it is immigrants or black Americans, communities remember how they've been treated. If these farmers want their farms run smoothly, they should respect farm workers. They should give them fair wages. They should give them benefits, and they should stop voting against their own interest. That was it for today. If you've enjoyed watching the video, make sure you click that like button and also subscribe for more videos like this. please consider watching these other two videos. That was Mr. TA signing off. Ciao.